It's cool to be different. At least I always thought so until I really was different. I was born a healthy 8-pound baby boy. Nothing unusual had happened to me. My mom hadn't ingested drugs or alcohol while she was pregnant with me, and my brother and sister, they were totally normal too. There was no history of any weird body deformities or mysterious medical conditions in my family, until I came along. At least I had the memories of a happy, active childhood to sustain me. Sometimes I almost wondered if that made things worse. I guess it's one thing to be born with something and not know anything different, but quite another to develop something later when you've known better and remember differently. I was a typically active kid. My mom was a big jogger, so I used to run with her for fun. Eventually, I was able to outrun her, and, well, that was a fun day. From then on, I got faster and faster and went from track team to track team. I took after my mom. She had been the track star at school when she was young, too. When I was 15, though, my body betrayed me, or at least that's how I felt. I started to slow down when it came to my running. It just suddenly seemed like I couldn't make my legs move as fast as I used to be able to. I kept getting slower and slower, so my mom took me to the doctor. Well, they couldn't find anything wrong with my legs or anything else for that matter, so I was sent home. My legs looked the same, it's just I felt completely different. The morning after the doctor's appointment, when I was told that there was nothing wrong with me, I woke up to a whole new set of problems. I knew right away something majorly was wrong. I couldn't even swing my legs to the side of the bed. I lifted my blanket and I looked at my legs just lying there. They were huge. They seemed completely swollen, but nothing had happened overnight, to be sure. I called to my mom, who had come running at the sound of the urgency in my voice. When my mom saw my legs, she immediately called 911. I was given an exam, but the first responders couldn't figure out what was causing the swelling. They said that I'd have to go to the hospital. My legs were getting worse, and they were worried about a whole bunch of things from what their whispered tones were telling me. I was loaded into an ambulance and taken to the local hospital. I was examined by more than a couple of doctors with nobody knowing what was going on. They'd taken blood, rushed the results, and that told them nothing. And there was nothing wrong with my legs from what they could see. From anybody could tell, they were just swollen and kept swelling. They were quite painful now, and I definitely couldn't put any weight on them. A specialist was being called in for a consult, so we were hopeful that they'd give us some answers. My legs were now almost 3 times their normal size. I'd been in the hospital for over a week at this point. I was really starting to get worried about my running career. I got to admit, I was pretty used to things coming easily for me. I was really athletic, and pretty much any sport I tried I excelled at, and anything I really wanted I usually got. This was the first time I really wanted something and couldn't get it. I wanted my normal legs back. I wanted to know what was wrong with me. I wanted to know that I'd be able to run again and be a normal kid. I was sent for more and more tests. I had needle after needle stuck in me for more blood work. Doctor after doctor looked at me and they couldn't figure out what was going on, and my legs continued to get bigger and then a little smaller, but then bigger again. Other than the pain in my legs, I didn't feel any different. I had no other strange symptoms. I just couldn't walk, and my legs hurt. My legs were hard not to touch, too. They looked so puffy I liked to poke at them with my fingers and see how white it would get where I poked. I was moved to another floor of the hospital for long-term stays. They wouldn't release me because they didn't know what was wrong with me. My mom pushed me around the hospital and the grounds in a wheelchair, and, well, it was always nice getting out, but it just made me want to get better even more. When I was outside, there was only one thing that I could think about – running. The thought of the wind in my hair, the sound of my feet as they slapped the pavement, the speed, the thrill, my heart pumping. I was dying to go for a run so badly I could taste it. But 2 months later in that hospital, I was about to lose my mind. I begged to go home. I had a wheelchair, my parents could set up a room for me on the main floor, and I could have home care come to check in on me and help. In the meantime, we could still keep going to see doctors and trying to find out what was wrong with me. Well, my doctor actually agreed with me about that. She could see how much I needed to get out of the hospital and said with such a good support system, she was confident that I'd be fine at home. My room on the main floor of our house was set up and a wheelchair ramp was added to the front stairs. It was just a temporary ramp because we really didn't know how long I was going to be in a wheelchair, although I hoped it would not be much longer. It was really great to be finally back at home. It was nice just to smell the familiar smells, wave to the neighbors, pet my dog. I was happy to be home. Some friends came to see me and I had started doing schoolwork at home to keep up. We started talking about my going back to school. I was secretly still waiting for my strange condition to remedy itself or for us to figure out what it was and get treatment first. It was time, though. I knew I couldn't wait forever to go back to school, and I was getting way too far behind in my schoolwork. The last thing I needed was to have to repeat the entire year at school. So I prepared for my triumphant return to school the next week. I was looking forward to the change, but I was also nervous about getting around the school in a wheelchair. A few days before I was heading back to school, I woke up to a strange feeling, this weird tingling in my legs. It felt like, well, how it feels when your foot falls asleep and then it wakes up with all those pins and needles, but both my legs felt like that. It had started around my ankles, and it seemed to be working its way upwards. It was almost painful, but not quite. Instead, it was more of just a really strange feeling. Well, I called my mom, who came running as always, and she pulled the covers back from my legs so that they could get some air. She said, "Oh my God, look, honey!" I looked down to see that from the bottom of my legs, they looked like the swelling was going down. My ankles were looking almost like normal, and it felt as though as the pins and needles were going up my legs, it was making the swelling go down. We stared in amazement, and my mom massaged my legs gently to help it along. An hour later, my legs were half the size they were. An hour after that, they were smaller still. An hour after that, they actually looked normal. My doctor had come over to check on me. She took my vitals and examined my legs. She looked mystified. "I just don't get it," she said. "You seem just fine. We couldn't figure out what was wrong, and now you just seem fine." Well, there was one thing that we hadn't checked at that point: if I could walk. We waited till the doctor got there before I tried, so I slowly, with help, swung my legs to sit over the side of the bed. I slid them down to the floor, and I started to put my weight on them. My mom was on one side supporting me, the doctor on the other. I took my first step, and I felt like one of those baby deer you see on a nature channel. You know, right after they're born, they struggle to stay upright. They have really wobbly legs. My legs were shaking, but they were working. I told my mom and the doctor to stand aside, and I started walking around slowly by myself. It felt amazing. I wanted to try running so badly, but I knew that would be pushing it. A few days later, and my first day of school had arrived. My mom was hovering more than ever before, but she stood aside when my sister pulled the car out to drop me at school. She hugged me, told me I'd done it, and that she was proud of me. I could see she was tearing up, so I got out of there pretty fast. That first day back at school was also my first day back on the track, and I ran like the wind. My legs were working, my mind was clear, life was good. You never feel as grateful for a healthy body as you should until you lose it. They never did figure out what happened to me, but well, I chalk it up to a life lesson about gratitude, and I leave it at that. To watch more animated story videos like this, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments section what you thought about this story.